For a suspended moment after the final note dissolved into the chandelier-lit air, the entire restaurant remained motionless, as if reality itself needed time to adjust to what had just occurred. Amelia could still feel the vibration of the aria in her chest, her breath slow and deliberate, her hands steady at her sides despite the storm of adrenaline rushing through her veins. Then, as though someone had broken a spell, applause erupted, first from a single table near the windows, then spreading rapidly until the entire hall thundered with clapping. Guests rose to their feet. Crystal glasses trembled against porcelain plates. Even the kitchen staff peeked out from behind swinging doors, stunned by the transformation of the quiet waitress they thought they knew. Amelia's cheeks flushed, but this time not from humiliation. It was the warmth of recognition, of being seen for something deeper than service and silence. Across from her, Victor Corelli had not yet moved. He remained standing beside his chair, one hand resting lightly on the backrest, eyes fixed on her with an intensity entirely different from the earlier amusement. The smirk that once curved his lips was gone. In its place lingered contemplation, perhaps even something bordering on respect. His companions shifted uneasily, uncertain how to react when their leader seemed momentarily without a script. Finally, Victor began to clap. Slowly at first, deliberately, each measured strike of his palm echoing louder than the others because of who he was. The room gradually softened its applause, watching him. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them until only the white linen table separated their worlds. "Well," he said quietly, though the microphone-less intimacy of his tone somehow carried across the attentive silence. "It seems I underestimated you." Amelia held his gaze without lowering hers. "Many people do," she replied, her voice calm but no longer timid. A faint ripple of murmurs traveled through nearby tables at her boldness. Victor's eyes flickered with intrigue rather than offense. "You have a remarkable gift," he continued, circling slowly around the table as though studying a rare artifact. "Why waste it carrying trays?" The question might have sounded patronizing from another mouth, but his delivery carried genuine curiosity. Amelia considered her answer carefully. "I'm not wasting it," she said. "I'm waiting." That single word settled between them like a chess piece strategically placed. Victor paused, absorbing the implication. Waiting suggested patience, discipline, ambition restrained but not extinguished. It hinted at a future she controlled rather than one handed to her. He tilted his head slightly, reassessing. "Waiting for what?" he asked. Amelia glanced around the room at the guests who still stood captivated. "For the right stage," she answered. Silence followed, not mocking, not skeptical, but reflective. Victor let out a low, thoughtful breath and gestured subtly for the quartet to resume playing, though their melody now felt secondary to the conversation unfolding at the center. "You realize," he said, lowering his voice so that only those closest could hear, "that when I make a promise, I keep it." Amelia's heartbeat quickened, but her posture remained composed. "And you realize," she countered gently, "that marriage is not a prize to be claimed after a challenge." A faint smile touched his lips again, though it lacked its earlier cruelty. "You speak to me as though I am merely another man." "You are," she replied simply. The directness startled even her, yet she refused to retreat from the truth. Around them, guests exchanged glances, sensing that this was no longer a spectacle but a negotiation of identities. Victor studied her face carefully, perhaps searching for fear or calculation. Finding neither, he seemed almost unsettled. Power had always bent others toward him. It rarely met resistance shaped by quiet dignity. He pulled out the chair opposite his and gestured for her to sit. The invitation itself caused a stir. No waitress had ever been asked to share that table. Amelia hesitated only briefly before removing her apron and placing it neatly on the back of a nearby chair. She sat, back straight, hands folded lightly in her lap. The symbolism did not go unnoticed by anyone watching. Victor dismissed his companions with a subtle nod, and though they looked reluctant, they obeyed, stepping a respectful distance away. For the first time, he and Amelia occupied the center without an audience dictating the tone. "Tell me about this father who taught you," he said. His voice carried less authority now, more curiosity. Amelia felt the sharp ache of memory but embraced it. She spoke of a modest apartment filled with sheet music, of evenings spent rehearsing until neighbors tapped the walls in half-hearted complaint, of lessons about discipline and emotion woven together. As she spoke, the hardened lines of Victor's expression softened almost imperceptibly. When she finished, he remained quiet for several seconds. "No one ever taught me something beautiful without expecting something in return," he admitted at last. The confession hung heavy in the candlelit air. Amelia recognized the vulnerability beneath it. "Then perhaps," she said gently, "you have been surrounded by the wrong teachers." A faint, almost reluctant laugh escaped him. "Perhaps." He leaned back in his chair, gaze drifting briefly toward the applauding guests who had resumed their dinners yet continued to steal glances at the unlikely pair. "You embarrassed me tonight," he acknowledged, though there was no bitterness in the statement. "Not intentionally," she replied. "You asked for proof." He nodded slowly. "And you delivered more than proof." The implication lingered. He stood once more, extending his hand, not as a command but as an offering. Amelia rose to meet him. When their hands clasped, it was not dominance but acknowledgement that passed between them. "I attend the opera frequently," Victor said. "Next Saturday. Join me, not as entertainment, but as my guest." The invitation felt different from the earlier wager. It carried respect. Amelia considered the risk, the symbolism, the potential consequences. Yet she sensed an opportunity not only for herself but for him, to redefine what strength looked like. "I will come," she answered at last. A subtle murmur of approval rippled from nearby tables, though neither of them turned to acknowledge it. Victor released her hand gently. "Then until Saturday," he said. As he signaled for the check, the tension that once suffocated the room had transformed into something electric yet hopeful. Amelia retrieved her apron, tying it back around her waist with renewed poise. She resumed her duties, but nothing felt the same. Guests smiled at her with admiration rather than polite indifference. The manager's earlier anxiety had shifted to awe. When Victor finally exited the restaurant, the cold night air following him, he did not look back with possession or pride. Instead, he paused briefly at the doorway, casting one final contemplative glance toward Amelia before stepping into the waiting car. The doors closed softly, and the vehicle disappeared down the harbor road. Inside, the restaurant buzzed with whispers of what had transpired. Not merely a bold proposal or a dazzling performance, but the rare sight of power meeting integrity and choosing, for once, to listen.